Well, everybody, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and I'm a little nervous because I have one of my really true idols here with me that I'm going to get to talk to, and we're going to get to hear a lot of great stuff from, and it's real excitement to have him on my channel and show. I want to say that he's from a family of artists. His father was Howard Munns, and his father taught him truth above agenda. And then you know him as a makeup specialist and effects designer, a wildlife artist, museum exhibit designer, and a Patterson Gimlin Film researcher, and an inventor. He writes, he's got one book, I believe, on the whole subject, and then 13 or 14 other books. And I think he has another book coming out. But today we're going to have a super deep discussion into the uh, Patterson Gimlin Film and the upcoming movie that he's one of the stars of, capturing Bigfoot. But it's great to bring you Bill Munns, William Munns, everybody. Thank you, Bill, for being here.
My pleasure, Todd. Great pleasure to be with you on the program.
Thank you very much. Wow, it's hard to when you can't say a little about the film without saying a lot.
That's true.
And by the way, everybody, he has two websites. One is BillMunnsCreatureGallery.com, and the other is themunnsreport.com. I'll put links to anything we talk about that can be linked to in the descriptions below for you during this show. So just know that I'll do that. Well, tell us, Bill, the new film is out. There's so much to say. You've done so much. It's amazing how a generation or two goes by and they forget. And your book, I got to recommend that book, When Roger Met Patty, on Amazon to everybody. It's a must have. You just must have this book. Tell us, well, where do we start? Tell us, in your words, some of the things that you've done, and we'll go from there.
Well, I think the things that are most relevant, since we're talking about the Patterson Gimlin film, the things that are most relevant are the fact that the film itself is physical evidence. It's 16 millimeter film. So if someone's trying to analyze the evidence, they must have a background in 16 millimeter filmmaking. It's real simple. You've got to know the medium to be able to properly analyze the movie from that standpoint. And I happen to have a nice background in that, both in college and film studies, 66 to 69, and then a lot of work with low-budget documentaries and a few feature films, short subjects, all 16 millimeter. So I have an excellent background in filmmaking in 16 millimeter, camera, lighting, sound, especially film editing and lab processing, all of that stuff. And the second thing, though, is that if you look at the Patterson film, the subject figure within it, of course, a lot of people who don't believe it's real, they say, yeah, it's a guy in a fur ape suit. Okay. Well, if you're going to analyze that simple question, is it a human in a fur costume? It takes somebody who's actually designed and built them. And as fate would have it, my career as a special makeup effects artist, I have done creature costumes, including fur ape suits, on a number of occasions. And in order to properly analyze the Patterson film to say yes or no, is this a suit or is this real, you must have the knowledge of how to actually design and build that kind of a suit or costume, if you want to call it that. And I bring that expertise as well. So when I got seriously into studying the film around 2008, I looked at all the other people who had attempted to analyze it before, concluding the famous Four Horses of the Apocalypse: John Green, Renee Hinden, Grover Krantz, Peter Byrne, Chris Murphy, Rick Knoll, some of the other newcomers that were coming up in it, and of course Jeff Meldrum. Look at all of them, and nobody had the background as a filmmaker or as a special makeup effects
No, they didn't.
creature guy. And it was that unique set of skills that sort of instantly separated me from everyone else, and actually, right from the beginning, put me up in a very lofty position as a researcher.
It still does.
And that in itself, it opened a lot more doors for me to, really carry it forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Bill, the interesting thing is all the info that you have in your head, they don't teach anymore. And it's incredibly imperative to this film. All that knowledge is, and people are just, they've got an app for that mentality now. And so I'm sorry, I just had to say what a treasure it is to have all your info here.
I'm sorry, we're kind of tripping on each other here.
Sorry, man.
In the area of makeup effects, actually, that's still an active profession, but it has changed so much. The materials being used now are just light years ahead of what was done in '67.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, even if they have a background in it now, if they don't know what the materials were and the techniques and processes in the late '60s, they don't know how to analyze it, because you must think in terms of 1960s materials and techniques. You can't think about contemporary. So on that side, you've got to be an old timer.
Mm-hmm.
The newbies, the new kids coming up, they don't get it. They're so caught up in the now materials and processes, and that will not help you in any way, shape, or form to analyze the film.
No.
But the second thing, the filmmaker thing, that's the sad part, because photographic film is a dying art. It's almost extinct.
Yeah.
So people who actually have knowledge of filmmaking process and how different it is from video or digital imaging, again, it takes an old timer who was actually there back in the 60s, maybe early 70s, to really understand how things were done.
Yeah.
So that certainly puts a bit of a challenge to anyone new who might want to take a shot at trying to analyze the film.
Yeah.
Trying to recover that near extinct knowledge of filmmaking.
Yes.
And trying to get into makeup effects, but get into your Wayback Machine and go back to 1967. Not that easy for them to do.
No. And they assume too much, I think. And hopefully it'll be like albums, and that it will come back. Film will make a comeback. I've seen people that are making their own emulsions and their own films and doing a lot of really great stuff. So fingers crossed. In the research world, film's going to be the one medium that it's going to matter the most. But let's talk about capturing Bigfoot and your involvement with it and some of your thoughts, every thought you have.
Okay, let me tell you first how it came about. Through the grapevine of other people who always email me and say, "Hey, Bill, you know anything about this? I heard about this. What's up?" I started hearing of a company that was putting together some kind of a documentary project. There's a company called XYZ Films. And a few people were asking me about it. I was telling them, well, I don't know. They haven't contacted me, so I don't have any idea what they're doing. Finally, after, a month or two of that, I looked up the company and found an email address to the company and just sent them off a nice little letter that said, "It's my understanding you're producing some kind of a documentary about the Patterson Gimlin film. I have a fair amount of expertise in the subject, and if there's anything I can do to assist you in better understanding the film, I would be happy to do so." Nice, simple query letter, nothing more.
Sure.
Well, I get back an email from Tamar Arden, the producer, and he says, "Bill, great to hear from you. We were actually planning to contact you about it, and we would be interested in interviewing you on camera as part of our documentary." So once he opened that door, then we negotiated for some time and a reasonable location. It had to be close to my home because my wife was sick and I couldn't leave her for any great length of time. so I couldn't travel very far. So they actually rented a cabin or a home in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So it was just a short drive over. They set it all up, and then I came over to them. This is last April 2025. Mm-hmm. And first they sat me down, 3 cameras on me, and Mark Evans, the director, was asking all the questions. And we must have done a 4-hour interview on anything and everything about the film. He had researched it very well. I'll give him that. His questions were very, very pointed and, very probative and such like that. So basically, they questioned me for about 4 hours. I have no idea how much is in the documentary, but it was comprehensive.
Good, yeah.
Only after we finished that whole thing did they actually show me the video scan of the new footage. And they told me absolutely nothing about what to expect. So they showed it to me, and I watched it. It was interesting. And then they actually gave me the physical film itself, reel of 16 millimeter film. And I spooled out past the head leader to a little bit of the actual footage. And I had a 10x eye loop for looking at something very magnified so I could look at the frames better. Mm-hmm. And I was looking through the latent image edge coding, which is on the side of the film. That's something that Kodak exposes onto the film in the manufacturing process, mm-hmm. but you never see it until the film is developed. So I was looking at the edge coding, and then I was also looking at the camera ID mark and the shape of the frame, the aperture frame, to help clarify something about the camera. So I was able to determine from that inspection, first, that it was shot on Kodachrome film. Second, the film had a manufacturer's date code of 1966, which is causing an unbelievable amount of confusion, which we'll get into in a while.
Yeah, I get it.
So it was on 1966 manufactured stock. It was manufactured at the Rochester, New York plant that Kodak has. Mm-hmm. It was filmed with a Kodak K100 camera, specifically the single lens mod version, not the 3-lens turret version. They have slightly different aperture shapes. And I was able to determine that it was, in fact, camera original footage. It was not a copy. Mm-hmm. So all of that I was able to determine in my examination of the film. Now, as far as what's on it, okay, as I recall, because they didn't allow me to keep anything, and it was a year ago, as I recall, there's a few seconds in the beginning where a guy on horseback, and he's got some kind of firearm. In my mind, I think it was a rifle, but somebody else said, no, it's a gun. I don't know, some kind of firearm. And it looked like this person was pretending to reenact Bob Gimlin on horseback backing up Roger in the PGF.
Okay.
But of course, in the PGF, we never see Gimlin.
Right.
So why they put that into this particular footage, I don't know. But I assumed what they were trying to do was kind of say, and this is the Bob Gimlin character. Anyways, from there, then they go to their Patty recreation. And have her just walking along away from camera, turning here, turning there, looking back at the camera, walking more into the woods. But the way the walk was done, it was so similar to what we see in the Patterson film that all of my attention was to the similarity of the walk. I did look at the costume, and it was clearly a man in a costume. I don't have any specific recollection other than the fact that as soon as I saw it, it was very obviously a suit. And I'm pretty sure one of the first things I look at it, if someone says, is this real or suit? First thing I look at is the shape of the head. Because in a human, if you put a mask over them to make them look like an ape, they've got a big forehead going straight up from the brow ridge before it curves into the cranial vault. Mm-hmm. Okay, Patty doesn't have that. Right.
Right.
So when I look and I want to think, does this look like a guy wearing a mask? first thing I look at is the forehead. If I see a nice bulging forehead, plenty of room to get a real head inside there, then I automatically think, yeah, probably a mask and a suit. Mm-hmm. And as I recall, that was my reaction. So I kind of looked at the head, yeah, guy wearing a mask. So I focused more on the behavior than really nitpicking costume.
Gotcha.
I was not impressed with any tremendous similarity. I think whoever made it was looking at the PGF and somebody said, copy this as best you can. So I think they did a mediocre, a middle grade effort to try and copy it. It was not Rick Baker, Stan Winston, Dick Smith quality. You know, it wasn't anything near top, or John Chambers quality. It wasn't anything near that. So the person who made it might not have even been like a Hollywood suit maker. It could have been somebody who makes stroller costumes for theme parks or something. So there was nothing terribly spectacularly dazzling about the fursuit. Very average grade. So I gave most of my attention to studying the behavior.
Okay.
And one thing that shows that this person in the suit does is at one point he raises his right foot so high and tilts it so the foot's pointing straight down to the ground. So the entire bottom of the foot is showing on camera. Mm-hmm. Now that matches to a T Cibachrome 72 of the Patterson Gimlin film.
Sure.
In which Patty has her foot pointed so it's literally toes straight down to the ground. You see the whole sole of the foot, and the whole sole of the foot looks white. Well, this particular scene, they actually froze that particular frame and allowed you to look at it a little more carefully. And it is such a perfect match to the Cibachrome print that I cannot imagine any way in the world that it can be anything other than a replica or a recreation, and that they actually had stills of the Patterson Gimlin film with them when they did it, and they had Cibachrome 72, where they had a frame, another print of that frame.
Yeah.
And they showed it to the person wearing it and said, okay, when you do the walk with your right foot, raise your foot this way. Because that's not a natural posture for a human walking.
No.
They never naturally raise their foot that high, pointed straight down.
Right.
It may be tilted at maybe a 30-degree angle when they start pulling it forward into the step. But you really have to deliberately try to do that. Nobody can say, oh, yeah, that's just naturally the way I walk. No, it's not. You have to do it deliberately. And the only way it makes sense deliberately is if somebody were looking at the PGF, looking at that frame, and deliberately trying to copy it.
Modeling, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
In your book, When Roger Met Patty, you have over on page 466, you talk about the hominid skin fur shift. I call it the impact-induced oscillation, but I think we all understand what we're talking about. And I know that you mentioned you kind of did your once-over that you're used to doing when you see something. You have this little mental checklist, the head and all this, and then you're keying in on the movements. Is there any comments towards that?
I didn't notice it specifically,
okay.
But I would not be surprised if we saw it on, well, no, wait a minute. This film had to have been done in the 60s. They didn't have stretch fur then. You would not have seen it in this. If you do see it, then it was made after 1984. That's a total bust. But I don't recall seeing anything about that from my recollection. I wish that I had still frames that I could actually analyze properly, but they wouldn't allow me to keep anything.
Sure.
What you're talking about, it's mentioned in the book, just for those who may not know. Patty has some marks on her hip when she turns, so she's walking basically profile. When you're looking at her, you can see the side of her body in almost perfect profile. There are some lines and folds and a little kind of a dimple on her hip. And there's a kind of a ruffled fur line about mid-thigh on her leg. Now, when she stretches her leg or contracts it, in other words, bends the knee straight or bent, that shifts quite a bit. But if you lock in a fixed point above her waist and align two pictures on that fixed point, so the waist is identical, and you look at one where the leg's straight, one where the leg is bent up quite a bit, these elements within the leg shift their position even though the fixed point stays fixed. Now, fake fur can't do that. Fake fur at the time, late 60s, was about like carpet. It had a rigid backing. It did stretch a little on the bias, but even that was nothing compared to what we're talking about. So for all practical purposes, anything in the 60s did not stretch.
Right.
This stretches. And that's the specific thing that you're mentioning. The fact that you can anchor a point about at the waist or slightly above and then see this shifting of position of the fur, real skin, real fur on a live creature does that perfectly. But on a suit made in the 60s, no way, impossible. But just to clarify for anyone who wants to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And, one of the things in doing the restoration and bringing it out again is I know people are going to want to roll out all the old arguments. And I think we have a much more savvy audience and group of researchers that are into this than, of course, as time goes on, there's just always more. One of the things I'd like for you, and we can bounce back around on this, but I'd like for you to talk a little bit about some of Roger's films that you have analyzed, his style of shooting, the cameras that he used. If you noticed, you had commented about telephoto lens and some other things, and about the film itself that people they want to know about, and then let's go into some of that timeline controversy, and then maybe how Boeing factors in, because I think a lot of this has come together. A lot of it. But
there definitely could be relationships there. I agree. To tell you about some of his other documentary footage, I was given a 550-foot reel of film. It was originally owned by Roger's widow, Patricia Patterson. She loaned it to Chris Murphy, a researcher, and Chris, after he did his evaluation of it, he loaned it to me, and I examined it in detail. I scanned frames from all of the footage. There were 5 100-foot rolls and a 50-foot roll, so that made the 550 altogether. What I was able to determine from that was to get a much clearer idea of Roger as a documentary filmmaker. Now, a lot of people like to pretend he's just some amateur making a home movie.
Right.
And I think in Long's Making a Bigfoot, they interview somebody at a camera store, maybe 60 or so, where Roger supposedly goes in, wants to rent a camera, and says, "How do you work this thing?" Like he knows nothing. Well, okay, maybe in 1960 he knew nothing. But by 1967, he was a very, very accomplished professional or semi-professional filmmaker.
Yeah.
What I determined from looking at that documentary footage was, first, most of it was shot on commercial Ektachrome, not Kodachrome. Only one reel was Kodachrome. And for those who don't know, Kodachrome is intended for home movies. The people who shoot Kodachrome project the original. They don't make copies. They just take the movie and they project it. Commercial Ektachrome is made specifically for professionals. It's made lower in contrast, lower in saturation, because it is intended to be copied in the final edit and production.
Mm.
So commercial Ektachrome is the preferred film for virtually everyone. And in all of my career as a student filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, doing features, short subjects, anything 16 millimeter, we shot commercial Ektachrome. Nobody shot Kodachrome.
Right.
Okay. So Roger's shooting Ektachrome, showing he's mindful of the professional standard for documentary work.
Yeah.
I did examine this film, and it's taken at a variety of different times of year. There's one reel where there's incredibly heavy snowfall and houses kind of scattered about on little farms, and a couple of acres around each one of the houses, but the snowfall looks like a couple of feet. That's got to be dead of winter in itself. But then there are forest scenes with spring to summer foliage, suggesting shooting, well into spring or summer. There's another one that actually shows Roger on camera. Someone's filming him, and he walks down the street and upstairs and goes into a store, and he's wearing cold weather headgear, the heavy kind of fur cap where the fur's on the inside,
Yeah.
and it has the big ear flaps that can fold down
Yeah.
to protect your ears from frostbite.
Yeah.
That's serious cold weather gear. So presumably when he filmed that, it was in probably wintertime as well. Then he has some footage of his Volkswagen bus with a sign on top that says Bigfoot Expedition 67, where he's driving among redwoods. Now, that's Northern California, or maybe a touch of the bottom of Oregon, but it's not Washington State. And the fact that the sign says Bigfoot Expedition suggests that he's not, doing this in 1966. Kind of seems contrary to the cause.
Yeah.
Anyways, they got footage of him in his van. There's footage of a man named Fred Beck. Chris Murphy identified him. And apparently he had an encounter that was quite famously documented just as a story that he said, oh, this happened to me. And apparently Roger did interview him as well. So Roger was clearly, looking to talk to people who had experiences with Bigfoot. So the content is really quite fascinating as far as what this footage showed. There's another thing which I never figured out, but he's got a lot of footage of a guy out in his backyard, fairly spacious, half acre or more, and he's sprinkling Kellogg's cornflakes on his lawn. And then a little later, a deer comes out of the woods onto the lawn to nibble on the cornflakes, and they were to attract the deer. And the deer's got its antlers in very early velvet. The horns are maybe 6-7 inches long, nowhere near a full rack for a white-tailed or black-tailed deer.
Sure.
So I'm not a hunter myself. I don't pay attention to how deers grow antlers or what time of year it was. Other people that knew about it suggested that might be like May or June in the summer. Okay. Anyways, that's the footage itself that Roger had that I examined. But the curious things about it are, one, he was using sometimes a Kodak K100 camera, same one he used to film the PGF.
Mm-hmm.
But other times he was definitely using a different camera that did not have a camera ID mark. Now, every camera made in America had the ID mark.
Yeah.
You could look at the film and you know what camera shot it.
Sure.
But the European manufacturers didn't necessarily follow that. Why? I don't know. I've never found an explanation. But this camera Roger's using with no ID mark suggests that it's either an Aeroflex made in Germany or a Bolex made in Switzerland. But it's not an American-made camera.
Sure.
So he is using another type of camera, and both of those, Bolex and especially the Aeroflex, are moving higher into pro grade, especially the Aeroflex.
That's pro stuff.
I use that constantly, professionally.
Yeah.
So he was definitely using different kinds of cameras, but the thing that I found most fascinating is in a few of the shots, one in particular, a location in southern Oregon called Carruthers Cove. He's got a 10-to-1 zoom on it. That's an Ingenue 12-120 zoom. That is a serious professional piece of glass.
Yeah.
I mean, no amateur gets their hands on a 12-120 Ingenue zoom. You get that only from like a professional camera rental that rents to filmmakers.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
Joe Schmo's camera store down the street does not stock that
Right.
and rent it. So Roger was using serious professional equipment.
Yeah.
He was not an amateur in any sense of the word.
No.
Now, there's another thing that was very curious about the footage. One of the reels, when I looked at it, the grain structure was so large it scared me. I looked at that and I was thinking, whoa, wait a minute, what kind of film stock is this? I mean, this isn't film grain, this is colored golf balls. They were so big. And I finally realized Roger pushed the film. That's a vernacular for overdeveloping film that you underexpose when you shoot it. Let's say you're shooting outdoors and the light's getting real dim and you want a certain f-stop, but you don't have enough light. So you purposely open up another stop on the lens, which means, you shut down, and you're going to underexpose the film purposely.
Sure.
And then when you send it to the lab, on the camera report, you just write on it, push one stop or push two stops. And they will overdevelop the film to compensate for the underexposure. Now, this is a very common professional trick, but an amateur is highly unlikely to even know about it, much less do it.
Sure.
But Roger pushed the film on two of his reels. So he was doing professional filmmaker processes.
Fascinating.
In his camera, in his lens, in the way he sent it to the lab and what he ordered the lab to do. Roger was doing professional things. So
Yes.
when we think of Roger, we have to throw out this whole concept that Roger's an amateur. No. By 1967, you must think of him as a semi-professional bordering on pro.
Yes.
In terms of his knowledge as a cameraman and a filmmaker.
I agree. You know, when the very from the very first video I've put out, the very first thing I've said was Roger Patterson was a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize that, or they don't realize that he had been researching almost a decade and interviewing 50 plus people. It's like, how did these two cowboys just get this? It's like, oh, you're so new to this, aren't you?
Well, I think part of the problem is there's a little cliche stigma attached to the Patterson film. It is often described as the second most famous home movie in the world, first being the Zapruder film of Kennedy's assassination. But by calling it a home movie, it makes it sound like it was shot by an amateur.
Right away.
And I think that very cliche designation actually discredits Roger by making it sound like he's an amateur. He's not.
It's all about discrediting Roger because that helps discredit what he captured on the film, in my opinion. I want you to touch on, one, he was using Kodachrome 2, and I suspect as a B-roll, if he wanted to do something or stage something, I think he would have used the other film that we talked about, the Ektachrome, but also, for a second, let's talk about film grain, because in my restoration, I think people think that they're going to see a Disney performance, and it's not at all. I've left film grain in there for people. There's also plenty of fingerprints so people will know what version, and we can talk later about pack versions and this of what's out there. We can touch on that.
Right.
But I wanted to leave some of that stuff in there for the future so people, long past me and you will have some of these things in there if it's forgotten or misplaced, the information. But let's talk about that film grain, and also, it won't be, the restoration is not going to be like a Technicolor. People don't understand Technicolor, is a giant process with a whole crew of people. And Kodachrome 2, like you said, is just made to be developed and shown straight off that reel. So it's not going to have that super, punchy vibrancy like you can do, like, for instance, when I restored the frame 352. That's without a doubt a different color palette, if you will, as an editor. But let's talk about film grain. I want to hear you talk about film grain some more, and the importance of it.
Particular question on that?
Well, why sometimes
or you
it's
want
called.
Me to just go, you want me to just go off on it?
Well, you can do both. You're going to touch on why it's grainy and what it means, and how it's important, and also how it's different from. I've had people say to me, well, 16 millimeter film doesn't have that many pixels. And I'm like, bless your heart. We don't even know about grain, do we?
Yeah, let's start there. Okay. All the newbies who were born and raised on digital imaging understand pixels.
They do.
Okay. A pixel is one dot of color on a screen or display. Every single pixel has a specific address where it's located on the screen. So not only is it encoded with what color it is, it's encoded with where it is. That is why when you make a digital copy of a digital image, there is no loss of quality. It's a perfect replica because you're copying not only the color information, you are copying the pixel location. Okay. People who don't know good old-fashioned film think film is the same thing, and it's totally different. Film doesn't have pixels in terms of individual images of colored light. What film has is grains of a chemical called silver halide. They're small particles that are sensitive to light. Expose it to light, changes the particle. How much light? Changes it little or a lot. This emulsion of silver particles is laid out on an acetate film base. That's the stuff that holds the thing in place. The emulsion is what actually has the chemicals and produces the image. But these grains of silver halide are totally random in their positioning. Kodak just whips it up as a liquid with a bunch of these particles randomly suspended and then pours it onto the acetate base. And they have no control over where all of these grains are. So the whole grain structure of any film is a completely random order. The grain has color information, yes, but there's no concept of like an address. It's just wherever it happens to exist on that particular film. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you copy a film, the grain structure on the copy side is not identical to the grain structure on the source side. So inevitably, those two sets of grain don't align with each other. And some of the particles from source going to copy, the copy grain doesn't quite get it because maybe it's only getting half the grain and half the space in between the grain. So it's going to have actually slightly different color. Maybe it's going to get two grains side by side and going to have half a color, one half the other. But it's not going to be precise. This copying where the grain structures do not align causes a slight reduction in the quality of the copy. Plus, the copy stock tends to build up contrast and a little bit of color saturation. And the contrast buildup is actually what we worry more about, because that means that anything which is kind of a light color on the original is going to get pushed a little closer to white on the copy. Yeah. Anything that is a little dark is going to get pushed closer to black. You make a copy of a copy, more problem, more of the light goes to white, more of the dark goes to black. The contrast builds up more and more. So our copies do not have the quality of the original. That's the single most important thing an analyst must understand, and just forget about digital imaging for the moment. Forget about this lossless copying where nothing changes. It changes substantially when you copy film. Yeah. Now, we can still work with it. The image is still good. There's a lot of information still there. But it's not 100% of the information from the original. We have to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the first fundamental for even understanding the beginning of analyzing something from film. Now, when you scan it, ultimately convert it to a digital image, from that point, any copies do not lose any quality. So when I scanned every copy of the Patterson film that I did at 4K, a little more than 4,000 pixels, once I got it as a scan, any copy I made was identical to my original scan.
Sure.
But the copy that I was working from, whether it was a first gen, second gen, third gen, fourth gen, whatever, the quality on that film was determined to a large extent by its generational quality. And so that had to be factored into the analysis of each copy.
Yes, yes.
Now, you got another interesting challenge. This is, again, something kind of technical that most people would never get.
Hey, can I interject one thing here? I want to interject one thing. You are the first person that did the first 4K true film frame scans, and that's super important from anyone else's copies. That's in your book, page 375, when Roger met Patty. But you know my process, so that means I'm the second one. So I was proud of that. So, all right.
Second's a good place to be.
It is. I don't mind at all. Keep going.
The reason for I went to 4K, traditional scanning of 16 millimeter film will tell you you do not want to scan it above 2K, which is basically like high definition television. 1920 pixels actually wide. You don't go beyond 2K because you don't want to see the grain. So if you scan at 2K, you're slightly below the grain structure, and the picture actually looks a little better. You don't see the grain. Well, I wanted to see the grain because I wanted 100% of the image data.
Yeah.
And the only way you do that is to scan the individual grains.
Right.
No fuzzing them together to kind of make a blurry picture that actually seems a little sharper because you don't see grain. No, I wanted the grain structure, so I went 4K. When I was setting up my camera to photograph film, I actually focused on the grain structure to make sure I had perfect focus on the camera taking it.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, now a curious thing about film. If you copy one-to-one, that means you're copying the source image and the copy image are the same size, shape, everything, commonly called a contact print. Yeah. If you do that, you lose quality. Okay. But if you put your source film onto a device called an optical printer, it's basically a projector coupled to a camera. And the projector projects into the camera, copying the film. Why they do that is that you can zoom in on the projection side. So you can actually magnify your source image, and on the copy side, the image is bigger. Now, that was done twice. John Green and Renee Hinden did it with CanOS Labs in April of '68. And then the A&E company in Utah, American National Enterprises, they did it again in '70 when they were working with Roger on a documentary called Bigfoot, Man or Beast. In both cases, it was copied on an optical printer. Now, what that does is you can print full frame if you like, but you can also zoom in, so the resulting film, when it's projected, Patty looks twice as big, where you can zoom in even more, 3 times, 4 times, whatever you like. You can print it frame for frame, which means when you project it, it's the same speed, or you can double frame, triple frame, quadruple frame print, which means you print one frame 2 times, 3 times, 4 times onto the copy. When that is projected at normal speed, it slows down the action. So at 2x printing, you project it, and Patty's only walking half as fast, slow motion. Go 3x or 4x, she's walking even slower, which helps you in studying the footage.
Yes. Did you get those? Did you get those scans, by the way,
Yeah. Oh, no.
from A&E?
Nope.
Dang it.
And I just refreshed. Yeah.
Okay,
Strange.
I got you.
All right. So when you copy film,
Mm-hmm.
if you copy 1-to-1, terms the copy is same image size as the source, you will lose quality, as I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But if you magnify the source image and project it into the copy stock, you don't lose anywhere near as much quality, because now the grain structure on the copy side is finer than the grain structure on the source side.
Mm-hmm.
And Kodak, when Roger had the original film, he went to Kodak and he asked them to make some 4x5-inch still transparencies of a few frames he had selected.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they went to a 4x5 transparency compared to an original frame that's about a third by almost a half an inch, the grain structure on the copy side is so much finer that for all practical purposes, that transparency is identical to the original in terms of grain structure and quality.
Beautiful.
So when we want to actually study how good was the original film, we go to that transparency, and Patricia Patterson still has them. I believe M.K. Davis scanned them. I don't know when. I scanned them as well when I was at her home in 2009. So MK and I both have scans of those transparencies.
Great.
When you look at that transparency, it is equal to what you would see if you looked at the original. No loss whatsoever.
Man, that's I want you to tell the audience about large format and we kind of bounce in and out like it's, but we understand that. But let's talk about the importance of the CV chromes, the larger format, like we're talking about, and even the Bruce Bonney. And what would have, and let's just go ahead and imagine if Roger had it optically printed to a 35 millimeter print, where we'd be today.
Yeah.
Go ahead, let it rip.
That would have been a blessing to do a 35 blow up.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about large format. Tell us about that and why it's important and how it plays into the whole original film and everything.
Okay. As I mentioned, any large format tends to have a higher quality than a 1-to-1 copy. Because the grain structure on the copy side is so much finer than the grain structure on the source side. That means less image detail is lost. So the transparencies are spectacular. The Cibachromes that a researcher named Bruce Bonney did around 1980, those are beautiful in terms of their general quality. Even the optically printed copies, the ones that John Green, Renee DeHinden did, and the A&E one, have a slightly higher quality than the contact prints that Roger had made originally. So they are also useful in the research. But here's something which most people don't know when they're thinking about analyzing the film. And that is that when you're analyzing it, you can't just say, oh yeah, I looked at the film and I analyzed it. It's not that simple. You have to say which copy, which kind of copy, which form was it copied in, because that's actually going to impact your analysis. And if you don't understand the difference between, oh yeah, I looked at a contact print copy, oh somebody here had a transparency, oh somebody there had a Cibachrome, somebody here had an optically printed one. If you don't understand the difference between all of those, you're not qualified to analyze the film, because you don't know how your evidence has been represented by those different versions or processes of copying. So again, it kind of goes back to the fact that you really need to know film, you need to know filmmaking, just so that you know to a certainty what kind of evidence you're dealing with. Once you know that, you can find spectacular information within the film that will allow us to conclusively determine whether it's real or whether it's a hoax. but you do have to know the film medium. I recall there's one remark that always makes me laugh. There's a book called Abominable Science. Two skeptics, Donald Prothero and David Loxton, wrote that, and they were trying to debunk all these cryptoid possibilities, including Bigfoot and the Patterson film. Well, Loxton, who wrote the PGF chapter 2, I believe it is, he starts talking a little bit about the film, and then he says, unfortunately, the film cannot speak for itself. And then he turns around and he goes and tells us stories of anecdotes of people, and everything else is just anecdotes. And I laugh every time I read it, not to demean Mr. Loxton, but that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. To say that the film can't speak for itself, the film speaks eloquently. You just have to know the language, and obviously he didn't.
Yeah.
I always compare it to, try to imagine a crime scene, and you have the detective on the crime scene, and the crime scene investigators show up, and the detective in charge says, oh, no, don't bother collecting any crime scene evidence. Just canvass the neighborhood and ask everybody what they heard or what they thought they saw. Nobody would do that. That's insane.
No.
You go to the best evidence.
Yeah.
In this case, the film's the best evidence. Forget the gossip. Forget the remembrances, the recollections, the testimony, the anecdotes, the stories, the gossip. Put it all aside. The film is the best evidence.
Absolutely.
Go to the film.
Absolutely. Can you tell us when you first saw the film and your impressions, just what that setup was, where you were, if you remember, and all that sort of stuff? Your impressions?
I don't remember exactly. It was probably around 1968. The first thing I probably saw was a magazine called Argosy that printed some stills and told the story of the filming. That, I believe, came out in February of 68.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after that, I'm not sure when, TV started showing the footage. And I'm sure I saw it at that time. And I didn't have any immediate reaction then about whether it was real or whether it was fake. I thought it was certainly curious and unusual. At the time, I was actually a budding makeup artist, and I was totally focused on Planet of the Apes, which came out, I believe, when is it? Early 68,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 months later, 2001: A Space Odyssey with the ape suits and the Dawn of Man sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So between Planet of the Apes and 2001: A Space Odyssey, these both, in their own way, were cutting-edge, state-of-the-art humans made as apes. Now, as fate would have it, everybody was piling compliments on John Chambers for Planet of the Apes, and the work is good, there's no doubt about it, but nobody had any doubt they were seeing humans made up like apes.
Right.
But Stuart Freeborn in England did the apes for 2001 and did them so well, a lot of people actually thought they were real apes. That's how good they were.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was, as a young makeup artist starting out, I was focused on those two and the techniques used. Now, what was done in Planet of the Apes, no relation to Patterson's film, forget it. But what was done in Space Odyssey had definite potential for comparison, but it definitely was not the same exact look, the same exact ape. So at the time, that's what was actually going on in my mind, was learning about ape suits and how they're done, how they're built, what you use, how you make them, how you dress people into it and out of it. And when I saw the Patterson film, I found it curious because it didn't resemble either one. And these were the two best that Hollywood could do.
Yeah.
Or movie industry, not necessarily Hollywood. But these were the best that anybody could do, and the Patterson film was different. I didn't have a copy that I could look at, just like watched it on TV and poof, it was gone. No way to videotape back then, so you could look at it over again. No way to do frame grabs.
Yeah.
So when I watched it, I didn't feel it was like anything that was done in the movies. But I didn't come to any particular conclusion that 100% it's real, not at that time. Then as years would go by, occasionally I'd see a documentary that would have it. And I'd think a little more about it and think, okay, this is unusual. This isn't the way we do it. But it wasn't until, as I recall, around the year 2000, when I saw it, looked at some stills, and I watched it again. I don't know how, maybe watched it on some video that I could watch over and over. And it started to crystallize in my mind when I was looking at the back of the neck. Now, in 67, when we have a suit, fursuit with a head mask with fur on it, we got two ways to deal with how you connect the head to the neck. One way is to not connect them, leave a gap. The other way is to add several inches of extra fur so it's loose so the person can move their head around easily. But you'll see these horrible wrinkles in the neck unless you build the shoulders up real high. That was a common technique.
Okay.
In the Bigfoot Manor Beast documentary, they interview a guy who built his own gorilla costumes and wore them. His name was Janos Prohaska. In the 70s, he was the go-to gorilla man for Hollywood. And they show him, he comes out in his gorilla suit, and then he takes off the mask and sits down, and he talks about the Patterson film. Well, you can see these huge shoulders that make him look like a linebacker playing for the Packers or something.
Yes, yes.
I mean, they're just massive shoulder humps to hide the wrinkles in the neck fold. Okay. So back in 67, those were your choices for the neck. Either don't connect the head mask to the neck, leave a gap, but if the thing tilts its head down, you'll see the gap. Or add extra fur so you connect it, but connect it loose, which makes a big wrinkle. So I was looking at the back of Patty's neck. She turns toward camera, a very radical turn, and then snaps her head back, looking straight ahead, walks away. And the neck is as perfect after as before. I looked at that and I said, no way that's a costume. Not 1967. Right. That just can't be done.
Yeah.
Back then.
The head snap.
And so that was actually when it started to crystallize in my mind that the PGF was real.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you address this in your book, and tell us what type of hominid and why she, in your mind, is 100%. I'm in mine, a real living type being. And then let's talk about, in the new documentary, there's a lot of weight given to Patricia Patterson and Clint, but that doesn't necessarily make them experts in knowing what's on the film. They may know the finances possibly better, of course, than anyone. But let's talk about some of that. Why she's real.
Okay, why she's real. Number one, the head.
Yeah.
Okay, we want to make a human look like an ape. First thing we have to do is try and hide the high forehead that a human has and a chimp or a gorilla ape doesn't have. Their head, after the brow ridge, goes kind of straight back.
Mm-hmm.
Human head goes straight up. Now, actors are funny people. They're real picky and difficult to work with. So if you try to lop the top of their head off, they're going to bitch about it and won't let you do it. And Screen Actors Guild would probably complain too. So we can't lop off an actor's head to make the forehead the way we want.
Right.
It's going to go up. It's not going to go back. So when we make a mask and we want to make it look like it's an ape, we have to cheat the shape of the head. First thing we do is we pull the brow ridge out quite a bit, an inch or more. If you do that, then you got to pull the muzzle out even more so the mouth sticks out further than the brow ridge. Once you pull the brow ridge out an inch or more, then you can kind of slope back into the forehead, and it sort of halfway looks realistic as an ape.
Okay.
Problem is, when you do that, you get a big head because you're adding a lot.
Right.
So anytime you try to make a human look like a chimp or a gorilla, you're going to get a bigger head than the human. When we look at Patty's head, she has a strong brow ridge, a slight muzzle. When you look at her in a pure profile, right above the brow ridge, the head goes straight back. Doesn't go up at all, doesn't even go up at an angle. It's like straight back. Okay, but it's small. Now, you try to make a mask in that shape and put it on a human, it's not going to fit. The only way I made one, actually, I picked an image of Patty to 6'2", because a lot of people were talking about Bob Hieronymus in the suit. He was 6'2", so I scaled it to Hieronymus' size.
Okay.
And then I diagrammed the shape of the head. I removed the thickness of the fur, and I actually made a head of that shape and size, and then cast it as a rubber mask. If you simply slip it over your head and you look forward, you can't see anything, because you're not looking out the eyes. You're trying to look through the solid forehead. The only way it works for human is if you tilt the mask so far back to bring the eye socket of the mask up to your eyes, and the head kind of slopes back. But when you do that, the head looks like it's looking up at the sky.
Right.
So you want the head, Patty, to look like it's facing forward. You literally have to look straight down at your feet, not even forehead at an angle. You're literally looking down at your feet or your belly button. And that's the only way you get the mask into the right position to look like the Patterson film. But you do that, you can't walk through the forest with a regular crown without stumbling over stuff, because you can't see what's ahead of you. So you're not going to aggressively go walking through the woods like that. So this head shape, this head size, basically says it is impossible to make a head mask of that size and shape for a person to wear and to be able to effectively walk around in the woods with the head looking forward in a normal posture. So that's number one.
Yes.
And nobody's ever been able to solve that problem of making an ape head on a human small. Rick Baker, genius that he is, never did it. Stan Winston, genius that he is, never did it. Stuart Freeborn, never did it. Tom Berman, John Chambers, Bill Tuttle, nobody's done it, and nobody ever will. You can't get rid of that high human forehead and keep the head small. So bottom line, you take a look at the head and the size of the head, the shape of the head, can't be a mask a human's wearing. Absolutely impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So right there, we can stop there and say, Patty's 100% real because of that. But of course, we can keep going because there's so much more. But that alone blows the hoax right out of the water.
Sure.
Now, then we have, second, the neck, as I told you. The neck's perfectly smooth before she turns to us, perfectly smooth after. Nobody in 1967 with fur material then could have done that. Virtually impossible. Stretch fur didn't come around until 1984 and became popular with hair actually knitted into a spandex base. I used it myself, wonderful stuff. It didn't come around till 84. So going back to 67, nobody had it. So the neck is number two, impossible, cannot be a costume. Then we look at the breasts. The breasts actually have some fluidity to them. Nobody back in those days produced prosthetics that had fluidity. They had only three materials to make prosthetics: natural foamed latex, foamed flexible polyurethane foam, or just plain slip rubber that was hollow. Those are the three things we made prosthetics and masks with. None of those mediums have any sense of fluidity. The slip rubber's too thick and stiff. The polyurethane foam and the foamed latex have so many air bubbles incorporated into them, so they're light foam, that they don't have any weight. Because they don't have any weight, they're not affected by gravity. So they have no fluid capacity about them. Now, we do see nowadays a lot of incredible prosthetics that are fluid. They're used to make fat suits. The best one is Eddie Murphy's girlfriend in the movie, what was it, Norbit, I think it is. And Rick Baker made the suit. It's amazing. And it's done with a flab resin, BJB foam or BJB resins makes this flab, and you can plasticize it all you want. It is so perfect, like human flab, it's unbelievable. But that's in the 90s. That's not the 60s.
Right.
Back in the 60s, we did not have fluid prosthetics that would simulate real fluid motion of the body. So there's number 3 right there. Then we go to number 4, the stretching on the side of the hip. Stretch fur, you mentioned that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't do it with a fur back then. Okay. Then we look at the shape of the arm and the way the arm goes into the chest. There's a little fold between the arm and the chest. It's a little kind of a half-moon curve. You see it on real human armpits. You will never see it on costume.
Yep.
The reason you see it for real is that there actually is tissue going from arm to chest. The reason you don't see it in a costume, even if you try to make it on the padding under the costume, and I've seen a few people try to make it that way, as soon as you put the fur on, you lose it. When you make a fur costume, you make a vest and a sleeve for the arm. And they join together exactly the way a shirt, vest, and sleeve join. Mm-hmm. So you have a sewn seam that goes from under the armpit right up to the top of the shoulder. So this little fold on the armpit, that seam where you sew the 2 fabric pieces together, destroys that seam. But Patty has it. That's not a costume.
Yeah, no.
Hey, that's another. Those are the main points from my analysis. Other people have done other things like trying to measure the proportions of the body. I'm not an expert on that, so I haven't gone that route. But other people argue the body proportions are incorrect for human. People have looked at the walk and said, no, this is not the way people walk. Again, I'm not an expert in that, so I don't go there. Other people have. But the evidence that Patterson film creature, Patty, is real is simply so overwhelming. And there's virtually nothing to the contrary that would say, oh, yeah, this is a suit. One thing I'll tell you, a lot of people, a lot of skeptics, they look at her hip and they say, well, there's a line here that kind of looks like a line on the waist where the pants were joined to the shirt. And there's this dimple here that doesn't make any sense. And then there's this kind of arcing line that kind of has a curve right where the thigh merges into the hip. And they say, oh, yeah, that's a suit for sure. It's not. You have to look at naked people, and we're not talking about centerfolds. Don't get your next issue of Playboy.
No, just get your book. It's in your book.
Look at naked people in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, and I'll grant you, naked people of that age aren't centerfolds. They have a lot of wrinkles and folds and such on their body, and you can find every single one of those folds on Patty's hip on real naked people.
Yeah. Yes, you can.
And another thing, on the back of Patty, she has a line down the bottom of her back, but it's only on the bottom half. And then there are 2 side lines that go horizontal. The line comes down the spine, 2 on the back. Okay, but it's not in the top half, only the bottom. Now, I found, oddly enough, I was at the beach one time helping my wife film a music video for her work. I had my camera with me, and there's a guy standing on the shore looking out at the beach, overweight guy, and I looked at his back, and he had the exact same line and the 2 horizontal folds, and I photographed it, and I'm pretty sure it's in the book, showing these folds, and they're absolutely correct for human anatomy, but nobody in their right mind that's capable of building a good suit would deliberately put a line down the back, because when people suspect a suit, that's the first thing they look for is the zipper in the back.
Sure.
They assume all suits have a zipper in the back. They don't, but people assume that. So if they're looking at something, they're wondering, is that a costume? That's the first thing they look for. Is there a zipper in the back? As soon as they see a line, yeah, I saw the zipper line, it's a suit. Nobody would put that zipper line on Patty deliberately. And it cannot be accounted for with any explanation of a fold of the suit, that it was smooth, but he moved in a way and it folded. No, that's not going to happen.
No.
It could not have been on a costume if Patty were, unless the person making the costume deliberately tailored that into it. And there is no logic for why they would do that, because they're begging people to look at it and say, oh yeah, that's the zipper in the suit. They would never do that.
No.
Absolutely would never do that. It's like asking an interior decorator to put a light on the wall and run an extension cord down the wall, along the baseboard, and then plug it into the wall. An interior decorator would resign before they would ever do something that amateurish.
Yeah,
They're going to run the electricity into the wall so you never see a cord. That's their professional standard. Same thing with a suit. We have professional standards. Nobody's going to build a suit with a line in the back that looks mistaken for a zipper.
No.
I mean, they would quit before they would do that, because it would hurt their reputation as an artist.
Yeah.
So they would refuse it. So that alone, that line also screams no costume, no suit. So you add all this up and it's just overwhelming. Patty's real.
Yeah. When you oscillate between as little as 2 or 3 frames of that beginning walk sequence, it's clear to see her glutes go up and down, her shoulders oscillate in the opposite direction, and the shoulder blades are movement under the skin. It's all there. It's been seen. It's been studied from around the world. But people seem to forget.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to forget some of that. They seem to forget.
Yeah, that's one of the more subtle things.
Yeah.
There's definitely something going on, because a costume doesn't have all that. The costume just has padding and fur stretched over it. And the only way it moves is if it wrinkles, which is obviously a costume, or if you move the body in a way that it pulls it slightly, and then it shifts ever so slightly. But anything that would resemble bone or muscle shifting under the skin, nobody at that time was capable of doing that.
Nope, not at all. Do you have any comments about why the family, immediate family, might not be the best source for, what people just assume? Oh, they got them in there. Whatever they said must be real. But that's not really the way things work, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all.
It isn't a soundbite society that's got a TikTok memory.
Exactly. And the capturing Bigfoot's playing on that.
Well, and I feel like also when I hear the producer say that his father worked for Al Diatley and he heard plenty of bad things about him, and he just kind of knew that making that a documentary was in his DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so one of the things talk about is people will say, well, this new footage that they found is AI, and I mean that's pretty weak, I think. But let's talk about that. Why it's not AI, and I can show some things. All this that we've talked about, I'm going to illustrate while we're talking. So.
Yeah. Okay. First, let's acquaint the viewer with, if you tried to do AI, how would you go about it? Probably you would try to scan the original film. Okay. Then that digital scan could be entered into an AI engine for analysis and then regeneration in a slightly new form. Okay. Let's, for the moment, give the benefit of the doubt and say it's a good AI system. It looked at the image, it regenerated something new, it produced a new output. Okay, let's just give the benefit of the doubt and say that's
follow that line.
Then you have to get that back onto film. Now, you would have to project frame by frame on a 4K or better monitor, and then you'd have to actually set up a camera and photograph that screen frame by frame. Now, here is the problem with that. The film they have is Kodachrome original. Nobody's processed Kodachrome since 2010. The last lab in all of America, Dwayne's lab somewhere in Kansas.
Yep, I've spoke with them many times.
Was the last lab in the country to process Kodachrome. And they put out a call to everybody, said, if you have it, send it, because we're going to shut down the lab end of the year. Bunch of people sent in any Kodachrome they had. And they even documented the last roll went through, I believe, on January 11, 2001, or 2011, sometime early January. But they got the exact date of the last roll processed. Then they shut it down. No more. So if you want to say, oh, this new footage was somehow AI generated, you have to explain, how did they generate AI 15 years ago or more when there wasn't any AI to be able to process that Kodachrome so you could even look at it today? Can't be done. So that alone, the fact that the film, the actual footage, is on Kodachrome stock, means it was processed at some point 2010 or earlier, and AI did not exist as a technology at that time. So the idea that what we're seeing, this new capturing Bigfoot stuff, might have been AI generated is a physical, technical impossibility.
It is. Some person will say that they could do it with an Ariflex digital printer nowadays, which I plan to push mine back to 16 just to archive to let people study. But when I do that, it won't be on a 66 or on a 1966 piece of stock film. That would give it away right away. So it's not going to happen that way.
It will not be on Kodachrome. You could do it on Ektachrome.
Yeah,
sure. You could do it on Vision Color Negative. Yeah, sure. But you can't do it on Kodachrome. No way.
And what model they would have to possibly use? It hallucinates, and it's. I understand some people may have a problem not being able to identify what is AI, but it's pretty easy to spot. So these guys aren't going to try to pull something like that with the.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Well, okay, I shared with you a picture in an AI video.
Yes.
I made a model years ago of a giant prehistoric ape called Gigantopithecus. It was 9 feet tall.
It's awesome.
And pictures of that ape are readily available on the internet.
Well, I'm showing it right now, probably.
Another artist that I know, a slightly deranged person with a wicked sense of humor, took that photograph, extracted the creature, the Giganto that I made, and animated it so it is dancing. And the fact that they disconnected the feet from the stand it was on, and when the feet are dancing all around, the AI totally regenerated the stand, even the part that was hidden by the feet in the photograph. And AI did this, but when you look at it, and you look at the way the fur hangs, it's so obviously fake. I mean, it's funny as all hell, but it's obviously fake. The artifacts, we call the digital artifacts in the AI generation, are very, very obvious. But, the AI thing is an interesting question, but as soon as you say, how do you get it onto Kodachrome film, the answer is you don't. Shut the door on AI.
Right away.
End of discussion.
You have been around long enough to have met all these legendary people who we don't have any longer. And so you're the one step away from all that greatness. Let's talk a little bit about some of those personalities. I've got a couple hundred pages of their interactions, and people don't realize how spicy they were behind the scenes with each other. And you know who I'm talking about: Grover Krantz, Peter Byrne, Renee DeHenden, and John Green, the Four Horsemen.
Okay, let's start with Grover. I met Grover in '88, I believe. At the anthropologist's annual meeting in San Diego. I had taken my Gigantopithecus model down to San Diego, and it was in the museum for a few days. And I also had a head-shoulder bust of Giganto that was in the book room where I displayed my artwork of some prehistoric hominids and such. And I met Grover. He was a very, very nice man, very intelligent, very calm. I didn't know until later that he snuck into the book room when I wasn't there, had a picture of himself side by side with my Giganto model, and I think he used it in one of his books without asking me.
Of course.
Not really above board, but I didn't chase after him about it.
Right.
But I did have a chance to talk to Grover because he was curious of how the skull was visualized for my model compared to a skull that he had interpolated himself. It was quite different. Now, with Giganto, we only have a bunch of teeth and 3 jawbones. We don't even have a complete skull and no body parts. So how you take this one mandible, this jawbone, and you visualize what the whole skull looks like, you can come up with several different ways. So Grover was very curious of how the skull was visualized that I used as compared to what he did. Now, I didn't visualize the skull. An anthropologist, who is it? Shakan, or I don't know, something with an R, Shakan, and Stephen Nash. They did the visualization and gave me drawings front and side, and I reconstructed that 3D and then sculpted on top of it. So that's what I explained to Grover. Grover was cool. I enjoyed talking to him, and he was certainly very knowledgeable. He was a very fascinating person. I didn't get any idea of him being temperamental in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
John Green was very cold. Maybe he warmed up to some people. He never warmed up to me. So all of our conversations were very, very matter-of-fact, cut and dried, stick to the facts.
Sterile.
No feeling, no emotion, no cordiality, no personal chat or anything. It was really just nuts and bolts of, okay, here's the film, what are we going to do? This is what happened, something like that. It was all very, very matter-of-fact. But certainly he was knowledgeable himself. Peter Byrne was a character. He had a much more colorful background, big game hunter and guide, and then got into the Bigfoot thing and hustled up a lot of money for research, set up the NASI Research Foundation and all. He was a character. He could tell incredible stories. He had a lot of fun. It was always good to me, but
cool.
From what I had heard, honesty wasn't his long suit. A couple of people said that he was not above, kind of pulling a fast one now and then.
Yeah.
I don't know that for a fact, but he and Rene DeHenden got into a war. I never met Rene. I heard he was a fireball. Yeah. And boy, if he was your enemy, he could make your life hell. But Peter Byrne, when he was kind of phasing himself out of it, sent me all of his notes, his research notes. And quite honestly, I was impressed at how thorough they were.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you were kind enough to share with me the Grover Krantz material that the Smithsonian has, and I read through that and all the correspondence between Grover and Rene, and I think Chris Murphy or John Green, maybe Peter.
Everybody makes it.
I was astonished at how many people Rene DeHenden was fighting with.
Yeah.
Man, he was going to war with everybody.
Yeah, him and Byrne actually got into fisticuffs. There was a police report, but it didn't go anywhere. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's really
and of course there was a story about him and Bruce Bonney, the photo technician he hired to do the analysis on the original of the Patterson film. And the rumor, the story that I've always heard is that they had such a vicious falling out that Rene actually had threatened to kill Bonney, and Bonney became a total recluse, hiding somewhere in Arizona, and wouldn't even make direct contact with other human beings.
It gave him PTSD so bad.
Yeah, he actually contacted me in 2017 through Jeff Meldrum. And the way he contacted me was he wrote his letter on 9 3x5 index cards. So the letter was on 9 of these cards.
Okay.
He sent those to Jeff. Jeff scanned them and sent me the scan. And Bonnie basically said, my time is limited, implying he was dying.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I want to give everything I have to you. I read your book. A few things I'd like to correct, but basically I'm impressed. And I would like you to have all my stuff. I was in Vietnam in business at the time. This is 2017. And I had to figure out a way to try to get home so I could meet with Bonnie and get all this stuff. So I had to get a plane ticket and set everything up, figure out where I was going to get the U-Haul, and I was going to drive from California to Arizona and meet him. But all my correspondence wasn't directly with him. It was a guy at a trading company and souvenir store in a little nowhere town in Arizona. So I'd email this guy. His name was also Bill. Bill would pass the message on to Bonnie, and then Bonnie would pass the message back to Bill, and Bill would pass it on to me. A real weird kind of a pipeline.
Yeah.
But a week before I was set to go, I got the message from Bill that says, trip's off, we'll reschedule.
Oh, no.
So I had to cancel my plane ticket, file for a refund, and wait and see if we could reschedule at another time. Unfortunately, we never did. And so I never got to Bonnie. He passed away, and I have no knowledge what happened to his stuff.
Oh, dang it.
Which is a tragedy.
It is.
It really should have gone to someone who could archive it for future generations.
We'll visit about that in private and see what we can do later. Almost a discussion that they want to sterilize him, it seems like, but you got to talk about Eric Beckjord. And the guy, he was a follower of Timothy Leary, who was a FBI, CIA informant. And even on Beckjord's old website, he put out a request. He was trying to get back in touch with Leary. When he tried to put the film up for sale on eBay, I got a hold of him on the phone, and he really just chewed. I got ripped, which was an honor. He was like, wow, I got really cussed out by a legendary guy. And but tell us, what do you think? What about him?
Beckjord, I never met. I heard some crazy stories about him.
Yeah.
But I focus mainly on the fact that when he passed away, two things of note. One is that he had borrowed Patricia Patterson's first generation copy.
Yes.
It was her archive copy she kept in a vault or safe deposit box in a bank. He had borrowed that around 1980 or so. Patricia trusted him. He made a copy, or several copies. He did not give her back her original first generation copy. He gave her a second gen instead, and he kept her best copy. That's basically theft.
Mm-hmm.
He stole it from her.
Yeah.
When he was dying, he started giving away some of his copies to other people.
Mm-hmm. For money.
And no, just gifts. He tried to sell the first gen. He was asking $1 million. He didn't get any takers.
Well, I called him.
For his medical costs. But anyway, when he couldn't sell it to anybody, he finally just gave up, knew he was going to die.
Yeah.
He started giving away copies. He gave one copy to a physicist named Bruce Maccabee.
Oh, yeah.
And Bruce contacted me around 2013, maybe 12, 13, thereabouts, and said, I have a copy of the Patterson film. Could you look at it and tell me if it's valuable? Beckjord sent me a letter with the film that said, this is the most valuable copy there is. It's the first generation. It's worth a tremendous amount of money. Good luck. So Bruce was asking, is the letter true? Well, he sent me scans of what he had, and I determined he had a second-gen copy that unfortunately had been mutilated. It had a break with a splice on 354, back, and it had weird notches cut into the physical film on the sides with something like a razor blade or an X-Acto knife. There's no logic to that other than some deranged person trying to mutilate the film.
Well, and scratches on this in the borders too.
Yeah.
Some notations.
So I gave Bruce the bad news. I'm sorry, you do not have the first gen, even if you have a notarized letter swearing that you do.
Yeah.
That was one of Beckjord's curiosities. I don't know who else he gave things to, and we never found out where the first generation went. We're still searching.
Yeah.
The other thing about Beckjord, though, is curious. He made several copies. Now, the original is a reversal film. That means when you develop it, you get a positive image, not a negative. There's no negative involved.
Exactly.
You make a copy, you get a positive again, no negative. There's no reason for a negative with reversal films, the original or the copy. But for some reason, Beckjord made a negative copy of the film and then printed a positive from the negative. Mm-hmm. Because the sides, the way the sides are white instead of black, you can't do that without going to a negative. Because in a negative, the black sides are clear. Mm-hmm. Light goes right through them. The only way you can get the side white is to go negative positive. Now, there isn't any reason for his to do that, but he did it anyways. So what he was trying to accomplish or what he hoped to do or what he expected that might help him analyze, nobody really understands. But I scanned 3 of his copies and determined that one of them was made by a negative positive process. The other was just reversal positive copies. But another curious thing I found out is that in 1980, Beckjord himself attempted a recreation of the Patterson film. He got a really horribly amateurish gorilla suit, probably from a Halloween costume store. And he had it striding along on an open area with trees in the background, walking along the same way, and then finally turns and walks straight toward camera so you can see up close how horribly amateurish the costume is. But Beckjord even slated the film. That's what they do in pro movie things. You hold the slate in front of the camera as the title, the director, the camera, the scene number, take number, and the clapboard for sound. And he was actually using slate on his footage, trying to be professional, which was meaningless, really, but he was trying.
Yeah.
So Beckjord did a lot of crazy stuff, I'll tell you.
He was experimenting, that's for sure, and not with just film. And interesting guy. That copy that I did, it's been run through the grinder. Can you imagine if I would have tried to clean it with ISO? But thank goodness there's other good frames of the ones that were butchered, and it's easy to put in. It's not a recreation. It's just correctly moving, doing stuff. Anyway. If you have
one copy that's missing a frame, like the one that Maccabee had, like I say, it had a tear right through the look back.
Right through the face.
And it was spliced back together. Yeah. You can just put another good copy of equal quality in. You can just put that frame right in there, and then the restoration is correct. Yeah. The defect is removed, and it's still a true copy.
It's still a true copy.
That can be done.
Yeah, and I try to explain to people, like when they did restore Metropolis, they had 21 copies to go from, and they could view them not only in motion, but they could go side to side and then analyze the frames in that motion and literally choose. And that's kind of, it's the same principle without so much luxury in editing.
Right.
So, So also, let's talk a little bit about, let's see here. There's did we touch on Patricia Patterson and Clint?
You mentioned them, but we didn't go into it.
Okay.
So
you want to keep it that way?
No. It has to be discussed.
Let's talk about it. What
misunderstanding?
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay, it is my understanding. I haven't seen the final edit of the film. It is my understanding from people who've seen it or describe it quite meticulously that Roger Patterson's son, Clint Patterson, says specifically he believes his father hoaxed the film. Okay, fine. He offers some personal recollection where he says he recalls his father burning a costume in the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of suggests that Clint, the son, is trying to imply the PGF's a hoax, Roger hoaxed it, and then he burned the Patty costume. That's what they're trying to imply.
Sure.
But given that the PGF is not a hoax and there is no costume there, if he saw Roger, his father, burning a costume, that's not it. Now, what Roger could have been burning could have been this costume that's in the new footage. Maybe it was shot right after the PGF. And then that was what Roger was burning, and Clint just lost track of time. Or it could have been one that I believe Roger did before he shot the real film.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he actually did get Bob Hieronymus, get a costume, put Bob in it, take him out in the woods, film something, because a documentary filmmaker at the time would have done that. Not for a hoax, but for what's commonly called B-roll footage. You don't want a documentary of people talking about Bigfoot that's just talking heads, people telling a story. You want to show something. So having a visualization, a recreation, a reenactment of a Bigfoot creature walking around in the woods while somebody's talking, that's a perfectly logical and respectable thing for a documentary filmmaker to do. So I believe Roger actually did that.
I do too.
He could very well have gotten Hieronymus to put it on.
Yeah, makes sense.
And if so, and Clint saw him burning a costume, could have been the one that was used for that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, when you talk about what Clint seems to recall, we won't even get into how flawed memories can be.
Sure.
And they can be horribly flawed. But if we take it at face value even, there are several explanations for what Roger might have been burning that have nothing to do with the Patterson film being totally real. So that basically, until you can falsify those possibilities, you can't leap to the conclusion, well, the PGF is fake because Clint saw Roger burning a costume. No, you can't make that leap. No. If you can't disqualify that it was not costume from these other situations, you have no leap to conclusion of hoax. So in that sense, automatically we have to dismiss what Clint says. Now, his saying he thinks Roger hoaxed the movie, a lot of people think that. Doesn't mean it's true.
True.
It's an opinion.
That's right.
It's not a fact. Without empirical corroborating evidence, all his son is saying is an opinion, a claim. It's nothing more than that, and it cannot be used to determine a fact.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not reliable enough. Now, I don't know exactly what Patricia said in the movie. I've heard different things that she might have confessed that she thought it was a hoax, or she retracted it. I've heard many different stories.
Sure.
But with no demeaning Patricia, it doesn't matter what she said. She was not at Bluff Creek that day. Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson were.
Yep.
Nobody else was there. If you weren't there, you cannot first person testify it is a hoax. You can offer an opinion. Yeah, sure. You want to believe it is one? Fine, believe it's one. But you can't offer anything in a substantive, factual testament. It is a hoax, even though I wasn't there to see it. It just doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
So the soundbite generation that you mentioned, the
yeah.
TikTok soundbite people, they grab these things and they leap to the conclusion, oh, but it's got to be a hoax. The son said it was. The wife said it was. No, that doesn't make it a hoax. You're throwing good science under the bus when you're doing that. And you can't do that. I mean, in the soundbite generation, in the court of public opinion, this documentary is, definitely going to get a few jurors voting for him.
Sure.
But science doesn't go through the court of public opinion. Science goes through the process of evidence, methodology to analyze it, leading to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And what they're doing on the Capturing Bigfoot film isn't science, does not yield a scientific conclusion, period. It doesn't.
No. I want to talk about, we circle back a little bit here. A lot of times people talk about the timeline. And you comment very eloquently. I want you to go through that for the audience on why that's not an impossible timeline on having the shot developed and showing it the way they did. And then now we know more about Boeing involved. These things make even more sense. Just like if Hieronymus was in B-roll footage, well, then neither one of them lied, ever. Roger didn't lie about it, and he took a lie detector test, and he came out clean. Same for Hieronymus. But people kind of forget to weave that little possibility in there. Well, let's talk about that, the timeline now for the film and how it was shot.
Okay, the one in Capturing Bigfoot, as mentioned, I verified that the manufacturing date code's 1966.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people are leaping to the conclusion that that date code indicates that it was filmed in 66 before the PGF. And they're claiming it's a rehearsal,
right?
Not a replica.
Right.
But nothing about that date code tells you when it was shot.
Nope.
Nothing. Now, I've even heard, sadly, that the director, Mark Evans, is telling people that I'm one of the people who said it was determined that it was shot in 66 or early 67. So please let me clear that up. Never at any time did I make that determination, because I would not make that determination without facts to prove that conclusion. And I have no facts at all, no evidence at all of when that new footage was filmed.
No.
If I had seen any evidence to determine the time, 66 or early 67, I would have remembered it. They never showed it to me. I have never made a determination of when it was shot.
Yeah.
Now, it's possible in the 4.5 hours they interviewed me, they may have asked me a hypothetical, and I may have answered in a hypothetical about something might have been shot 66, 67. If that's what he's talking about when he tries to pin that on me. He's not releasing the entire conversation, the context in which my remark is, or an actual quote of my remark in its entirety. So if that's released, it'll verify that I've never authenticated that film as being shot in 66 or 67.
No, but
I am adamant 100% it was shot after the PGF and was a replica or a recreation, but not a rehearsal. So
I am too.
Anyone who thinks they're saying, Bill Munns said it was shot 66, 67, I'm sorry, they've got it wrong. That is false. I absolutely never said that. I never determined it. I have never seen any evidence that would support that.
Right. Let's talk also about Roger's timeline when he shot the film to when he's showing it a few days later, and how that played out and why it is possible. I know you cover that in your book.
Yes. That is a common skeptical criticism. Roger is basically confirmed by several sources to have shot the Patterson Gimlin film on October 20, 1967, a Friday. Time based on sun shadow angles, about 1:30 in the afternoon. Okay. After that, and he knew he had something that he thought was incredible on footage. He tried to figure out, how am I going to get this processed as soon as possible? So he and Bob packed things up, and they went into the nearby town, and he called his brother-in-law, Al the Owlie, told him what he had, and said, I want to get this to you as soon as possible. Now, there are conflicting stories. Did he send it post office special delivery? Did they charter a plane to air courier it? There are disagreements on how he sent it to Al, but it is true he did send it to Al in Washington. And Al the Owlie is the one who then took it to be processed. Now, here's the wrinkle in that. The private lab in Seattle that was licensed to process Kodachrome, they say the manager of that at the time, a man named Frank Ishihara, was interviewed by a number of investigators, including Peter Byrne, and he says, we shut down the Kodachrome machine on Friday night. We did not run it on Saturday. We didn't gear it up until Sunday. So, According to Frank Ishihara, the lab does not process Kodachrome on a Saturday. But somehow Al got this Kodachrome film processed on Saturday because Roger saw the finished film projected on Sunday morning, the 22nd of October,
yes,
with John Green and Raiden A. DeHenden. So skeptics take this as a point of criticism, and they say it couldn't have been shot on the 20th because it couldn't have been developed in time to be seen on the 22nd, so they're lying about when it was shot. And they embellish that and say, oh yeah, it must have been shot weeks earlier with Bob Hieronymus, and then they got it processed to see it look good, and then they finally faked the thing so they can do the footprints, and then they come home and see the footage. You know, the skeptics use that as a platform to try to say it wasn't filmed on the 20th.
Sure.
Well, that timeline, how does Roger shoot it on the 20th, Friday, get it somehow to Al that night, Al somehow develops it on Saturday, when the Kodak lab that does it in Seattle says they don't do it on Saturday, and then have it to show on Sunday. There have been a lot of rumors about some other private lab, but the filmmakers in this Capturing Bigfoot bring a new wrinkle into the whole equation, because this footage that they have wasn't part of Roger's footage, or it wasn't owned by Al or anybody else. It was apparently in the possession of a man who worked at Boeing Aircraft. And the filmmakers, Tamara Arden and Mark Evans, told me that Boeing had some kind of a laboratory so they could actually process their own film when they're photographing test footage of new aircraft and engineering studies and everything, because they did military contracting, and they wouldn't want to send that to a common lab out of their control.
Nope.
Better to process it in-house. So apparently Boeing had a lab.
Sure.
Now, I have had other people that I know who are quite savvy in films and labs and everything else who've done a lot of research on this. According to them, Boeing couldn't process Kodachrome. But we don't really know all the specifics of this lab at Boeing. So we don't know for a fact if they could have processed Kodachrome or not. I don't know what the filmmakers are implying. Like I say, I haven't seen the final cut, so I don't know what's in their documentary in that regard. But somehow this idea that there's a lab at Boeing that does process Kodak 16 millimeter films does add a whole new avenue to explore to possibly explain how the processing got done. Now, Al, the one who had it done, conveniently forgot how he did it when asked by researchers. And Roger, when he was asked, said, "I can't tell you because the guy who helped us might get fired."
Yeah.
Sounds like it was done by somebody kind of under the table, you know.
Right.
So when you start adding up all these various things, the processing at the Boeing lab starts looking real good. But I don't know for a fact that they were capable of processing Kodachrome.
Right. It kind of falls apart with that. I got to say this.
Yeah.
People don't get.
Yeah, but it is a mystery. It is a legitimate mystery how they got the film processed. Because Roger wouldn't say when he was living, and Al conveniently forgot, which is bullshit, but he did say that.
Right. Well, yeah.
So that mystery, why nobody will tell you where and when it was processed, fuels a lot of the suspicion.
Exactly. And people have to consider this. I want to really point this out. In 1967, when you said you would keep quiet or you would keep your word, you did. And they weren't going to get a guy fired because he worked on a Saturday off the clock for a few bucks. And then everyone's got to realize that blue movies, if you don't know what that is, look it up, were produced in these labs, but generally by off the clock or technicians that were not being watched. And so whether they say they shut the lab down for the process on Friday and they didn't come in and run other things, who knows? There's all kinds of possibilities. Yeah. It's 1967.
Yeah, I often thought about that.
Yeah.
All you have to do is slip somebody a $100 bill.
That's it.
And they can conveniently do it, and then even more conveniently forget that they did it.
Yeah, and you weren't.
That's just that was the reality of the time.
You kept your word.
You could bribe somebody to do just about anything. As long as not a hit on somebody, but I mean, yeah, you could get things done where the rules say you can't. Just grease the palm and get it done.
And get it done. And
and just to clarify for people who don't know what a blue movie is, back in 1967, a movie that showed explicit nudity or an actual act of sex was legally obscene, and if you showed it, the police could actually arrest you for possession of and showing that film.
Yeah.
I mean, it was illegal. So if you wanted a lab to process it, the lab was really sticking out their neck to do that. That's why, as you say, they'd slip it in after hours, grease the palm, no record. They did it because that kind of film in that time, 1967, was actually legally obscene, and you could be arrested.
Big trouble.
For shooting it, for processing it, possessing it, or showing it.
Yeah.
So, that's how the blue movie thing factors into it. It's just another example of getting things processed under the table.
Very much so. Very highly illegal, and yet it went on all over the place. Also, how many, we talk about Roger four-walling this movie around the country, and I've tried to get people's estimations. And do you have any idea at one point how many, and I know that's why DeHenden was just like trying to be an octopus and grab them all back, but how many copies do you think at one time were floating around?
Hard to say. Let's count it up. Roger made first-gen copies from his original. I've heard 2, I've heard 5.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know which is correct. From one of those or 2 of those first gens, a whole bunch of second-gen copies have been made. I would take a wild guess, 30, 40 of them or something, but quite a few. Second copy batch was Renee DeHenden and John Green. Canna West Labs did a 400-foot reel on an optical printer, full frame, full reel, zoom ins, slow motions, freeze frames. I mean, the whole wazoo.
Yeah.
And from that Ektachrome master, they started striking off copies. John had probably 3 or 4. Bob Gimlin was given 1. Renee had several. He gave several to Russian Bigfoot researchers.
Right.
Because one Russian researcher asked me to appraise the footage he had, and they sent it to me. He had some of the footage that Green had given him.
Igor, yeah.
Yeah. And so quite a number of the Green to Hinden copies circulated. They were very, very common. There were quite a number of them. Then A&E Enterprises got the original and made their copies for their Bigfoot Man or Beast documentary. I have no idea how many release prints of that film they put out, probably in the hundreds, maybe more, of that film. I bought one copy on eBay of the entire film and pulled out the PGF section. But they also made a 4-minute promo. I'm not sure why. And it had a lot of the PGF footage in that little 4-minute segment. And a weird thing was that on the tail leader, they had John Wayne, the actor, his name written on the tail leader. I don't know why. Really, really strange little things pop up.
Leftover leader.
But how many copies A&E did of their Bigfoot Man or Beast? I guess at least a couple hundred, maybe more, depending on how they distributed the film for theatrical showing. So there's a lot of copies out there, no question about it.
It could go into the hundreds.
Yeah, it could be easily.
And known and confirmed known abouts, and I know from your book there was 10 or 12, but wouldn't you say, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to guess. Do you think that you know about 25 copies maybe now? I don't know.
I've got 25 in my inventory.
Alone, yeah.
25 individual identifiable copies. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut this next statement right out, but okay, I'm back. I know it's 2 minutes.
Look back now.
Yeah, it's 2 minutes long at 47%.
Yeah, it's nice. Very, very nice.
I really wanted to hold true and keep it looking archivally correct. I have the unmatted version, but anyway, that's the one that's going to get shown. No one wants to see sprockets jumping around.
Yeah.
I probably have 20 versions of it. But...
Okay.
All right, so everybody, I took a little break there, but I wanted Bill to see my restoration. I haven't asked him anything about it. This is completely cold and not prepped. Well, what do you think?
Image quality is beautiful. I commend you on that. The color saturation isn't overblown, which is nice. The detail when Roger's not shaking the camera is splendid. It's funny, I'm so used to looking at the image stabilized version that I did to take out a lot of Roger's camera shaking. That this was kind of a rude shock.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Not image stabilized and see how much Roger actually shook the camera. He does the look back. He holds that really nice. But man, the beginning, he's just shaking it all over the place. And the end, even when he's planted standing still, he's still shaking most of that final walk away. So I was actually kind of surprised to be reminded how much poor Roger was shaking the camera.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I love the image quality. I really do.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's very common with the copies to keep building up contrast. And you seem to have brought the contrast back down to a much better tonality. Got a lot more gray tones in there, not pure whites and pure blacks. And it definitely does make it more fascinating to see this.
I think that, and also at 47%, you can see Roger's movements across it. It's not so fast and jerky. You can get a feel where those trigger pauses were. And as the audience becomes more sophisticated and learns through the Bluff Creek Project and people, the layout of the film site, what actually happened, I think it makes a lot more sense at this speed. But you can you can also see what I really like is between the middle walk and where you see her first around the side of the tree, you can really see her well between those two trees walking. You get some of the best calf movement in her legs. When you slow it down, and I haven't even got to those close exams yet. This is just what people are going to see, and I don't think they've seen anything like it.
No. But what you're talking about, yeah, when Patty's behind the trees and Roger's waiting for her to come out and show herself, yeah, there is one brief passage where, even though she's behind the trees, there are gaps, and you can see her foot moving through the gap. That particular sequence probably should be image stabilized so that the background is on a lock, and you take out Roger's camera movement to appreciate the feet. But yeah, that's a very, very vital little nugget in there of factual information.
It is. You know that when you
things like that are in the film everywhere, and you really have to dedicate yourself to studying a lot of those subtle details, as you obviously have.
Yeah. So when you do machine stabilization, as you know, it starts twisting and warping the vertical and horizontal axes everywhere to make it work. And so my goal was really archival on this, to let people see how it would have looked played on a freshly shot as it is, minimal stabilization in there, and how it looks, and a little slower, of course.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. To simply acquaint people with the film, they should see it the way it was shot. So in that sense, your choice of going that way is excellent. Then when you go into more specific analysis, then image stabilizing is crucial for studying details on Patty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are different techniques for different purposes.
And we'll do that.
But to acquaint people with the film, you chose the right approach.
And also, I don't want to overload them with all that at the beginning, and this movement, that movement, and he said this or that. It's just, just tell the story and show the film.
Yeah, right.
So, well, take another look or watch it, whatever. I just hope. Thank you for commenting on that. It was an afterthought, kind of to put it together for you, but it's just taken so long, and there's, like I said, I left fingerprints in it and things like that, but more to come. We can't say right now. But Bill, when's your book coming out that you have coming up next?
I'm not sure. I'm guessing summer.
Okay. Well, more
for the new book. Yeah.
More to come on that, and let's try to pick up again and have another visit, either closer to the release of the film or after it, and then and same for my deal. I'm not sure how much of this will make it into what, but I'm sure some of it will. So.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, I hope you guys have enjoyed. And Bill, don't let go. But I'm going to let the audience go here. I hope you guys have enjoyed our conversation. It's been a living room chat, so to speak, with the greatest, Bill Munns. Y'all have a great time, and we'll see you soon.